Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am here to give some updates on my 55K page reading challenge. Helping me today is Pip. Pip is my little three-legged cat who I adopted from the SPCA. And I was going to film without him, but he was crying so much down below that I had to invite him to join him. And he does fine on three legs. Someday, you can see right there, he had a car accident. He was brought to the SPCA and with a crushed back leg after he's probably hit by a car. But he does okay. So you're gonna sit right there. No? Don't want to stay? Okay, so what have I been reading? I did not do an update last week because I was in Florida and it just wasn't conducive to making that sort of video. So I'm going to squeeze 2 weeks into this update. So week 20, the first book I finished was an audiobook, and I'll show you a paperback version, and that was The Comedians by Graham Greene. This is the story of three Englishmen, Browns, Jones, and Smith, who are going to visit Haiti. And this is when Dr. Duvalier had just become the leader of Haiti. All three of these men are shady dealers. They are the comedians, and they're each on their own sort of scam. But the big takeaway of this book is read this book to see what life under a strong man can really be like. And you will meet the menacing Tonton Coute. And they were Dr. Duvalier's secret police who wore sunglasses and beat the crap out of people and shot people with Tommy guns. This is a really good book. It is the second time I've read this book. I think I enjoyed it more the first time just because it was just such an amazing discovery of what life, like I said, under a strong man could be like. Very highly recommended. And then I had finished The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. This was a group read that I created. We read this over April and May. This is rightly one of the best books of the 20th century. It is extremely dense, but it's also extremely readable. Depending on how you want to read this. You could analyze one chapter and talk about one chapter of this book for an hour. Easy. There's a few chapters like that. I just read this book straight through as a novel, and I know I was missing some of the details and the philosophical meanings, but I just wanted to read this book and enjoy it for what it was. And it is definitely well worth it, depending on how you want to read this book. Someday I want to reread it and really pick apart these chapters for everything that Mann was talking about. After that, there was, I read this on a digital, so I don't have a copy, The Monk by Mathew Gregory Lewis. This is a Gothic novel. It was written in about 1791, and it was remarkably entertaining. Highly melodramatic. At the time it was written, it was very salacious. It had nuns. Yeah, and the author definitely had a thing against nunneries and monasteries. And it was an interesting discussion between the people of what the author's actual religious beliefs were. We're not sure he was an atheist or a non-believer, but he definitely had something against the churches and the monasteries and the nunneries. But it had a lot of salacious material too, as I said. Lots of nuns talking about nuns having relationships that maybe they shouldn't be, and dirty dealings of nuns, and a monk that falls from his established religious beliefs, and he's lured into these things by his desire for a woman. As I said, it was highly entertaining, even though it's really rather an old book. After that was another audiobook. This was The River of Gods by Candice Millard. And this is nonfiction about Richard Burton and Speak and their discovery of the source of the Nile. It's more about Richard Burton, even though Speak is officially credited with the discovery of the Nile. And I really enjoyed this author. She has written one of my favorite nonfiction works, The River of Doubt. That one's about Theodore Roosevelt. I've mentioned that numerous times on my channel. She has also written a book about a president, the president is McKinley, not McKinley, the president who was assassinated. I'm drawing a complete blank on his name right now. She also wrote a book about Churchill and his escape as a prisoner of war. And so she's a very good author. If you like a very simple history, she does it very well. She does not go into a lot of academic details. And that is one of the things that I don't like in nonfiction, is when the author gets into the academic dealings and say they have something to prove about history. She's just telling the story about what happened with Richard Burton. And Richard Burton was a remarkable man. He was a polyglot. I think he spoke 21 languages and 12 dialects fluently, and some other languages not quite as fluent. So interesting character, interesting subject, and I can highly recommend that. Next was a digital book again. This was Scandinavian Noir out of Iceland, and that is The Snare by Lija Sigurdardottir. And this is a story of a single mother. She is, of course, divorced, and she is having a lot of trouble with her ex-husband because the ex-husband caught her in a compromising position with another woman, because she basically is a lesbian, and her situation becomes so dire that she becomes a drug smuggler, sneaking cocaine into Iceland, and she's becoming a very good drug smuggler. And the syndicate that's having her smuggle drugs wants to up the game and have her bring in more and more drugs. She does something in this book which totally turned me off her character. She murdered some drug-sniffing dogs, and depending on what you consider murdering in dogs, but she killed drug-sniffing dogs to get her cocaine into the country. So that really turned me off of her character. But it's still an interesting book. And there is another side story of one of the airport police. He's getting ready to hit the mandatory retirement age, and he wants to score a big drug fine. He wants to catch a major drug smuggler, and he has his eyes on this lady. I liked it pretty good. And then I finished up for, I've already talked about this, some short stories for Horror Mayhem on, this was Gothic Horror. No, this was not Gothic, it was Cosmic Horror Week. That was the Yellow Sign by Robert W. Chambers, The Shadow from the Steeple by Robert Bloch, The Shambler from the Stars by Robert Bloch, and The Haunter of the Dark by H.P. Lovecraft. And that's what I read for week 20. Week 21, I was on vacation in Florida. You would have thought that I would have read more, but having nothing to do but lay around the beach and go to the ocean. But I read not as much as I usually do. And the first book that I read was Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. I actually read this as a library digital copy because I didn't want to bring a physical book down to Florida with me. And there is a group read, basically hosted by Noah, and everyone who reads it must converse. I enjoyed this. Gene Wolfe has a very sly style. He describes things, and if you're an astute reader, you can see through the narrator's description that the narrator is describing something that he does not understand, but the reader can understand. And it makes the reader have to pay attention to what's going on, because there's so much more going on than what is on the surface. You have to dig into the background. It's essentially the story of a torturer in the far distant Earth. The sun is dying on Earth. So humanity has gone to the stars. Civilization has sort of collapsed back into, I won't say a medieval world, but a less technological world. And I will be continuing in June with the Claw of the Conciliator. And then for Folk Horror Week, I read a folk horror novel. It's a little longer than the 250 pages that are recommended for Horror Mayhem. It was 346 pages, and that was The Reddening by Adam Nevill. And it is the story set in England. And essentially there's a lot of erosion near the shore of England, and it opens up a cave that had been previously unknown. And this cave was host to prehistoric humanity, where they did sacrifices. They discover a whole big pit of bones, animal bones and human bones. And the human bones show evidence of being eaten by humans. And it is 12,000 years old. And it has a really good start on this book. But the author shifts gear and sort of switches over to something else, more in line with horror. It's still a good book, and I can still recommend it. It's but I like the premise more of this cave of ancient humans with sacrifices and cannibalism. After that, I read The Hustler by Walter Tevis. And this is the story of a pool shark. And he wants to become the best pool player. And he wants to challenge the guy named Minnesota Fats, who is the established pool champion. And I won't go too much into detail. It is a character-driven, because the main character has a lot of hubris, saying, I can defeat this Minnesota Fats. And it's not quite as easy to defeat the champion as he thought it's going to be. So I enjoyed this book. I read it in one day. It's like 224 pages. And I was just totally absorbed in The Hustler. After that, I read some nonfiction. That was The Fox and I by Catherine Raven. This is a story of a woman with her PhD in biology, and she's living in a remote part of the world. She's living on a road that's technically a road, but it's not paved, and it's just far away from civilization. And one day, a fox comes to her property, and she develops what she calls a friendship with this wild fox. She does not claim that he's a domesticated fox. He is definitely wild, but he does things that foxes should not necessarily be doing, like hanging out on her property with her. This is a book that got rave reviews from Steve Donahue. I enjoyed this book quite a lot. I'm not sure I would go into the raving territory. I don't think it was that good of a book, but a very decent book. The author goes a lot of philosophical musings about nature and what it's like to live alone, and what is it like to interact with wild animals. After that, I read some short stories for a folk horror week, and that was The Windigo by Algernon Blackwood. And that is a story of some hunters going into the wilderness of Canada. And we have a hunter, and he has his guide, and the guide is very nervous at this part of Canada. And one night, they hear things in the woods. And the guide disappears from the tent. Or maybe the guide was pulled from the tent. This is an older short story, but highly entertaining and well-deserved classic in the horror genre. Next, I read The White People by Arthur Machen. This is a highly stylistic short story. It starts off with two gentlemen talking about the nature of sin and evil. Can a sinner sin without being evil? Can someone be evil without sinning? And then it sort of spins off into a found manuscript of a young girl who was interacting with something. And I won't say what that something is, but it's just a beautiful story to read. And the last thing I did for the Folk Horror Week was A Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lads by M.R. James. And this is another classic of horror short stories. And it is, again, two gentlemen talking. They talk about weird things that happen. And it is the story of one man who discovers a whistle. And it's a very ancient whistle with some cryptic writing on it. And he cleans it off and blows it. And that whistle did summon something. What it summoned, I am not going to say. So, where does that leave me? For week 20, I read 2,118 pages. For week 21, it was 1,183 pages. And that brings my total up to the year to 26,617. So I am well on my way to completing this challenge if I keep up my pace. So what am I currently reading? On audio, I am reading Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope. And Anthony Trollope is just such a delightful writer, very amusing. I have started reading for June on the Range, even though it isn't June yet, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And this is a reread for me. It is one of my favorite novels, I think. It is just extremely vicious and violent and gorgeously written. And there are some characters in this that are totally unforgettable. In theory, I'm supposed to be reading Never Did the Fire by Damila Elite and Catching Fire by Daniel Hahn. This is for the 2-month review podcast where they're reading a novel, Never Did the Fire, originally written in Spanish. I have not been enjoying that novel very much. And also reading a translator's diary entries about translating that book. And I've actually been enjoying the translator's comments much more than I've been enjoying the novel. Mostly because he's talking about translating Spanish into English. And I know just enough Spanish that when he's talking about it, I can really understand a lot of what he's saying and some of the complications of translating one language into another. I'm probably going to DNF those books, to be honest, just because I have so much to read and I'm just not really enjoying the novel very much. And that's what I am doing. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.